I grew up dreaming about being a police officer. Police shows were my favorite, but when you grow up wanting to be a police officer or an astronaut or a fireman, life happens and you become a high school teacher, which is where I found myself. And I did that for about 8 years, and I decided at age 30 I was going to quit my job. I didn't have another job lined up. I rolled the dice, and 30 years later, I'm still in law enforcement now. I had a career with the Riley County Police Department because they were the first ones to offer me a job. I was living in the area. Manhattan, Kansas is the Little Apple. That's its nickname. In fact, there's at least one occasion where I think it's true that someone got off the airplane at the Manhattan Regional Airport only to realize they weren't in Manhattan, New York. So that's kind of the joke sometimes. It's the home of Kansas State University. So a lot of people will know, if they're sports fans, Kansas State Wildcat. Fort Riley military installation is nearby. It's currently the home of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red 1. It's a mostly rural county. I think 610 odd square miles, 614, something like that. Manhattan is the county seat. Currently 55,000 people, and the Riley County Police Department is a consolidated agency, so there's no sheriff's office, there are no other police departments. It was in October of 2000. It was kind of what we would classify in policing as a home invasion. So somebody breaks in the middle of the night, does not end up carrying out the act for some reasons that are specific to the investigation, so I can't get into that. But this is reported. The victim calls, and the Riley County Police Department responds. And this case was kind of unusual in that it was the 3rd floor of an apartment complex, mostly student housing, just off campus adjacent to Kansas State University. No signs of forced entry. The victim told us that to her knowledge, everything was locked, and suddenly, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, this person appears. And we admittedly did not investigate the case very well. It just seemed so unusual that, and I wasn't directly involved with the case at this time, this particular case. We questioned her truthfulness because it was just so odd, it didn't seem real. And that's one of the things that you learn when dealing with assault victims is you don't question them, you don't call them liars, you don't question their truthfulness. We did, simply because it was not the kind of case that you saw in Manhattan, Kansas. We generally had anywhere from 20 to 50 rapes reported every year, and almost all of them were acquaintance, meaning the victim knew the offender. A true stranger rape was not something that happened very often at all. So we weren't very experienced in investigating that kind of case, and so we probably didn't do a very good job in collecting evidence. The second one, I believe, was August of 2001, right before I arrived, was transferred to the division. So that was my first experience with the case. And I think we recognized immediately that there were similarities. It was in the same building. And again, very little evidence, the same kind of MO, same physical description. We had the same MO. Same location. I believe it might have been another 3rd floor apartment. No witnesses. So we knew the first victim was being truthful. And this one was an actual rape, as opposed to the first one, which was categorized as an aggravated burglary because no physical assault took place. So we actually were dealing with a rape. So this one was much more an involved investigation. It simply led nowhere, as the first one had. It led nowhere. The next one led nowhere, but by then we knew we had a problem on our hands. We had the same offender. I'm not sure if we were thinking in terms of we have a serial offender and this is going to continue to happen. I don't know that we were thinking that, again, because this was not something that happened in Manhattan, Kansas. So it probably took us a little bit by surprise. Oh, wow, I guess we have an issue. And then how to deal with that, disseminating the information to the public, to the university population. So we had 2 university students, very similar in attributes. As I said, we worked it much better than the first one. Obviously, I've read every case, so I can tell you this second one was very thoroughly investigated, but again, led to nothing. We had another one in 03 as well, and of course, and again, the first 3 were in the same apartment complex. So we knew we had the same person. Again, very thorough investigation on the third one, but led to nowhere. The MO, which is modus operandi, the method of operation, the timing was generally about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, typically when the body is in the most deepest form of sleep. It was no signs of forced entry. The offender woke the victim, typically had a weapon, a handgun. Sometimes it was described as an automatic, sometimes semi-automatic, sometimes it was described as a revolver. Masked, gloved, brought everything that they used during the commission of the crime with them, took everything that they used with them as they left. Apparently having a second layer of clothing, like typically described as bulky, and from all the elements of the cases, we suspect that this clothing was discarded quickly thereafter and had another pair of clothing to confuse any witnesses. Generally, the same kind of things were said, the same kind of things were done. Physical description, again, generally the same, 5'10" to 6 feet, 180 pounds, fairly muscular. So a couple of very common things were muscular thighs and kind of a paunch, a beer belly is what many people, victims described. But so we knew there were enough consistent similarities in everything that, as I said, right from the second one and then on, we were dealing with the same person. The victim generally had roommates who were away during some type of break in school, whether it's a summer holiday, whether it was over Easter break, there were some over Thanksgiving break. So there was always, that was another part of the pattern. The victim lived with somebody else, but that somebody else wasn't there because the school wasn't in session and the victim had stayed behind. So we knew that those time frames were the most likely to produce another attack. So our messaging became consistent during school breaks, summer breaks, Christmas, Thanksgiving, spring break, Easter. We regularly put out public service announcements at those times. We developed protocols on how to respond to these. We would sometimes, again, I'm saying collective we, but the patrol division, for example, would often practice how they might respond. We knew the typical location, so the first 3 attacks were in one apartment complex, and then the next 3 were in a second complex, but again, the same. So the first 6 series were spread across 2 different apartment complexes, not very far apart from each other. Obviously, you know, someone could ask, hey, did you look at management? Did you look at all the names of people who were living there? And the answer is yes. We had stacks and stacks and stacks of names. And this was, again, early 2000s. Most everything was in paper. Databases, computer databases were in their infancy. Evidence processing, particularly when it comes to DNA, was kind of in its infancy as well, and we were a smaller agency. We had an idea of when things might happen. We had an idea of typically where they were happening, in apartment complexes that predominantly housed college students. We just didn't know exactly when. So many of these attacks were months and even sometimes years apart. So there was no real way to decipher a pattern. Like, okay, we know within the next 14 days or, you know, it didn't lend itself to that kind of temporal analysis.